Jack, when do we move to waivers? Is it 11:30? Okay, so we have 15 minutes here, and my objective here is if you will look with me on page 4 of your agenda, we're just going to look at the action items, okay? So we have quite a few action items at this meeting. Not all of them had a hour-long PowerPoint associated with them. Some of them are associated with information that's been presented to you at a prior meeting and is being refreshed here. So we're just kind of trying to get our ducks in a row with the purpose of understanding what things you may have more questions about prior to lunch, so that staff can work over lunch to answer any questions you may have. So if we could go down the list here briefly. So the first two relate to the lengthy discussion you had at the March meeting. And what Andrew has been able to confirm with OSPI staff, now that we have the data, is that Morton, Renton, and Onalaska do meet the data requirements associated with exit, and that is on your action sheet. Conversely, OSPI's recommendation, and we concur, is to keep Soap Lake in required action status, although they have made that a progress. You recall this was the situation we discussed at the last meeting, where you had one school within a district make progress, another school within the district has now popped up on the P list. And so there's actually success to celebrate there, but as a formal matter, they would remain in required action under the parameters of current law. So kind of 1 and 2 are kind of grouped in that respect. If there are any questions on that, I can get Andrew or Linda working on that before lunch.
Is this the appropriate time, or do you want to?
Sure,
Yeah.
particularly if it's something
Exactly.
the staff is
It's
going to have
really-
to investigate.
Right,
Sure,
okay.
we'll go.
So this is actually more for my fellow board members and for the staff. I'm fine with the release of these 3 districts. They've done what they're supposed to and so forth. But the issue I raised is something I talked about last board meeting, and that is, I think that we should have a mechanism in place to examine the long-term impact of red districts once they leave the red district. There are successes to celebrate, but we really don't know, this is true for the country really, the long-term sustainability of the intervention projects. And I think that that's part of our larger policy overview. It's also something we owe the legislature and the public in terms of examining whether this is a strategy. So what I'd like to do is, and I don't know if you see head nods, is that right? So I don't think that it should be an amendment to the motions, because these districts just deserve a clean release. And it's not, by the way, directed at them, this long-term review necessarily. And we will see this because we have other cohorts coming along the way. What I would like to have is something that the board does that's more than just sort of agreeing to do this, because this will be an analysis that would take place maybe 2 years, 4 years down the road with perhaps different composition of the board. So what I was thinking was maybe at the next board meeting, if Ben and your staff could come back with some suggestions about how we as a board could memorialize in some way this commitment to having a long-term view of the RAD process as schools exit, say at 2 years out, 3 or 4 years out, 6 years out, something along those lines. So.
That's exactly the sort of thing we need to hear now. That's great. So appreciate that.
And so if people have thoughts about that,
Any comments about that?
I just think it's an excellent idea. And it's, I think we saw a lot of head nods. And that kind of follow-up and reporting back, and I think we asked Andy about that, but to formalize that process would be a good thing.
Okay. We will do that. We will come to the July meeting with some, I already have some ideas, and I spoke with Peter offline. I think that's a very doable thing. Item number 3, the CTE course equivalencies, which you are fresh from seeing some of them. So the only thing to remember about this is that, rather than create for you a separate binder, those are all on the online packet, okay? That's what Linda, actually Doug Kernan helped Linda So when you get this motion, you won't have a bunch of framework documents, you'll be looking around like, where are these things? We posted them on the online packet for a variety of reasons. So if you had any questions about those, I believe there were 21 of them, there they are on the screen. That would also be helpful to receive prior to lunch. I appreciated that OSPI was very, they took every question that we sent them and was very pedestrian and
addressed.
thorough about,
Yeah.
So we have on the record responses to the questions that we have received to this point.
Trey?
Kind of similar to the other topic, one thing we did discuss was how I think we might be prepared to adopt these, but how we might do an implementation communications plan around them. And I think Dan talked a little bit about it yesterday, but just, you can have these, but if we don't have an implementation, strong implementation and follow-up plan, see, how did it go once it's implemented? And I'm not sure, I think you might have said yesterday that's OSPI's role or something like that, but just having an understanding of who's gonna do it and how we're gonna stay abreast of this topic would be helpful, just some generic idea around that.
I would agree, like, one of the things I was thinking about is, down the line, maybe knowing about the utilization of these, this opportunity, this process, and so to get a sense of is it working, and do we need to do more of them, or see if we can do more of them than Holly?
Peter and I were just deciding who was gonna ask this question, so I came into this process pretty sure that I understood that districts that were already accepting course equivalencies would just continue to have the same equivalencies they've had, and they're good. The law says that districts have to accept equivalencies. We have locally developed ones. We're fine. Then I had looked at the language that was up on the slide yesterday and went, wait, I better make sure I understand that. It was a little bit confusing to me. I asked the question about it, and I thought I was pretty sure that the answer came back, yes, if local districts already have course equivalencies that are being accepted, they're good to go, they don't have to take one off the list. Peter walked away with exactly the opposite understanding, so just one more time, I wanna really make sure that we're clear what's happening with this list.
Sure. So let's pull up that slide, and Linda, why don't you join me for a second? So do you have that PowerPoint with
Yes.
with the language of the law? Just give us a sec here, if you would. And thank you for asking the question.
My understanding, and I confirm this with OSPI, that's their understanding as well, that if districts have existing course equivalencies or ones that they develop locally, that those are not affected by this list, that they can keep using them. Or they can also develop new ones and use those. But they have to have at least one from this list.
So, wait, so, okay, so now I'm sorry, can I have that?
Okay.
So
Holly,
that, that is, yeah, so that is counter, that is what Peter is thinking as well, so it's a good thing I'm asking this question. So, this is a much bigger impact than I think, I have not heard any districts that are currently granting course equivalencies thinking that now they have to develop and offer something from this list. My understanding was, but when you read, that's why I got confused, because I think that's what the language looks like it says. My understanding was that the purpose of this was to make sure that all districts were accepting equivalencies, and that they would have to approve something that came off this list, but if they were already had equivalencies in place, they didn't have to take something from this list, what they have to have is equivalencies in place, but that's not your understanding.
And there's actually two different things going on, one of which we are the cause of, another of which we are not, okay? So the thing that was of interest to the board and that we pushed was the creation of these statewide lists that has no bearing on your continued use of any course equivalency that you already may be using. But if you are a district that offers this course on the list, you must grant credit. You must grant the credit that the state determines is equivalent, no matter where you're, if you're a student at Mount Baker High School or a student in Vancouver High School or a student in Continental Washington. You would get 1 credit for this particular course on this list, course equivalency number 19, because the state has said that that's worth a credit. Separate from that discussion, what occurred in the legislature was a requirement that districts offer it in.
Do we have the language for
Yeah.
that? Oh,
No later than the 2015-16 school year, district must at a minimum grant equivalency in math or science for a high school career technical ed course from the list of courses approved by the State Board of Education. But is not limited to the courses on the list, means that they can continue to do what they're doing, but they must offer one.
So this,